What's up, you guys? Today's animated series review is about a group of robots battling in a war between good and evil in order to save their planet from total annihilation, and I'm talking about the Transformers. Transformers, the animated series, aired in 1984, consisting of 4 seasons with a total of 98 episodes. The story introduces us to a futuristic planet which is inhabited by robots called Cybertron, a planet once known for its tranquility but now has fallen under corruption. Due to a war that broke out, this eventually caused a split within the planet into 2 separate factions: the Autobots, whom fight for justice and honor, and the Decepticons, who fight for power, greed, and domination. The war on Cybertron eventually led to the Decepticons in draining the planet's rich source of energy, thus causing it to be on the verge of extinction. With this devastating news, the Autobots are forced to evacuate. However, their escape wouldn't be as easy, as the Decepticons decide to pursue after them to eliminate any remaining survivors. With some intense action taking place in space, both ships fight for their life. The Autobots end up crashing on a new planet within a mountain as the Decepticons land elsewhere but at a distance. Leaving them unconscious, 4 million years end up passing, when suddenly the volcano erupts, triggering the sensors of both ships. A machine then analyzes everyone and its surroundings into a computer known as Teletran, giving the robots a new style of identities and transforming abilities. With that said, the Decepticons end up discovering that the new planet they're on is full of energy, enough for them to steal, build, and repair their ship called the Space Cruiser, in order to head back to Cybertron. By using Energon cubes to store and convert the planet's energy into a vibrant form of iridescent or purple liquid, the Autobots try to put an end to their motives. While battling in a power plant, the Autobots end up saving and befriending 2 human allies, Spike and his father Sparkplug Witwicky. Reluctantly, they both decide to help the Autobots regardless of circumstances, and after successfully doing so, the Autobots learn that they've landed on a planet called Earth in the year 1984. So with that said, time goes on and the Decepticons are globally known as a threat, and the Autobots end up working with the government and military, whom assist them with Energon as a thank you for saving their planet. They even adapt to their new transformations, which are all uniquely equipped vehicles like cars, trucks, and planes of all sorts of different models and designs. Although the Decepticons end up recreating their space cruiser and attempt to leave Earth, due to a sabotage, they end up crashing into the ocean, which is where they settle their new base, as it often rises, allowing them to enter and exit. But knowing that the Decepticons are still here, the Autobots decide to remain on Earth as long as they were given permission to do so, in order to protect the humans from any harm. So within the Autobots, you mainly have Optimus Prime, the courageous leader, Bumblebee, Jazz, Cliffjumper, Wheeljack, Prowl, Sideswipe, Ironhide, Ratchet, Hound, Mirage, Grappler, Sunstreaker, Trailbreaker, and Jetfire. Then you have some of the smaller characters like Brawn, Gears, Huffer, and Windcharger. And as the episodes go on, more characters are added to the list, such as Beachcomber, Blaster, Bluestreak, Cosmos, Hoist, Inferno, Perceptor, Powerglide, Red Alert, Sea Spray, Skids, Smokescreen, Trax, Warpath, and Omega Supreme. Then you have the Dinobots, consisting of Grimlock, Slag, Sludge, Snarl, and Swoop. But it doesn't end there. You also get characters who have the ability to combine into a bigger transformer, like the Aerial Bots, consisting of Air Raid, Fireflight, Silverbolt, Skydive, and Slingshot, who create the Big Superion. The Protectobots, consisting of Blades, First Aid, Groove, Hotspot, and Streetwise, who create the Big Defensor. And last but not least, you have some cameos from Alpha Trion, Elita 1, Firestar, Moonracer, Chromia, Devcon, and Dion. And as for the human allies, you have many that appear throughout in various episodes, but in regards to some of the pivotal ones, you have Spike Witwicky, Sparkplug Witwicky, Chip Chase, and Carly. And within the Decepticons, you mainly have Megatron, the ruthless leader, Shockwave, Starscream, Thundercracker, Skywarp, and Soundwave, who has cassette tapes within him like Ravage, Laserbeak, Buzzsaw, Rumble, Frenzy, and Reflector. And then you have other recruits who join later on like Dirge, Ramjet, Thrust, Astrotrain, and Blitzwing. Then there's the Insecticons with members of Shrapnel, Bombshell, and Kickback. And like the Autobots, you also have characters that combine into a bigger transformer, such as the Constructicons, consisting of Scavenger, Mixmaster, Longhaul, Bone Crusher, Hook, and Scrapper, who create the Big Devastator. The Stunticons, consisting of Motor Master, Dragstrip, Dead End, Breakdown, and Wild Rider, who create the Big Menasor. And last but not least, you have the Combaticons, consisting of Onslaught, Vortex, Brawl, Blastoff, and Swindle, who create the Big Bruticus. As for the human allies for the Decepticons, you have a lot of evil, mischievous characters, but the one who had more of an impact is Dr. Arkville, whose fate unfortunately turns him into a half-robot with a bionic arm. Throughout the series, as years pass, you get to see the Autobots and Decepticons constantly battle with each other, as there are tons of scenes with a lot of action enough to convince you both sides really had a huge falling out. The occurring grudge between Optimus Prime and Megatron indicates some of the best rivalries I've seen when it comes to good versus evil, as both show their frustrations and resentment towards each other on numerous occasions. For example, for any time they fight, they have a rule like the loser has to leave Earth exiled to deep space, but that's just barely scratching the surface. First, starting with the Autobots, Optimus Prime is considered the most trustworthy leader to lead the Autobots into victory. A lot of episodes indicate his wisdom, courage, and compassion towards all his loyal allies. Although some episodes get him into some damaging situations, he never backs down from a fight, continuing with a positive attitude. Next, because there's so many Autobots to keep track of, oftentimes we're slowly introduced to characters as only a selected few get their own special storyline to shine on their own. But because this show contains one of the biggest rosters I've seen in a cartoon, there's usually multiple characters that appear on and off screen emphasizing who they are with their strengths and weaknesses. However, in most cases, some of them don't even get the recognition they deserve, as they vaguely appear in the background without any idea what their name is or when they even joined. So it's very crucial to pay attention, even though a good batch of them contain the colors white and red. But nonetheless, it's still pretty awesome to see new recruits from either sides. Now, looking at the Decepticons, unfortunately, other than their main goal, which is trying in every episode to conquer Earth and its resources, there's really no other agenda that the villains have to offer, which can somewhat become extremely repetitive. For example, if any scientist happens to create some type of new or destructible weapon or gadget, especially if it's naturally discovered resources, Megatron tries to get his hands on it no matter what the odds are, like the Voltronic Galaxer, Pearl of Buhudin, the Corlomium Crystal, the Gold Lagoon, and so on. However, despite always retreating due to many losses, to make things interesting, the Decepticons did create an intergalactic transport system otherwise known as the Space Bridge, in which it only operates for 11 minutes, to transport whatever Energon cubes they've collected over time and sending it straight to Shockwave, who basically remains on the depleted and desolated Cybertron. And speaking of Cybertron, this is mostly where the focus of the entire series relies on, because not much is really known in the beginning as to what exactly happened to the once thriving planet, but as the series progresses, everything starts to slowly unfold to make more sense. For starters, in Season 1, we get to see the technological planet surface within the Earth's orbit, which causes cyclones, hurricanes, and extreme chaos, leaving the Autobots to face off in a brutal attempt for survival. However, in Season 2, this is where things start to slowly pick up. For example, you learn about the Autobot ancestors being stowed away in storage, as well as the history of the planet as to what it looked like before the root causes of the fallout, along with some key storylines involving Alpha Trion. Alpha Trion plays a pivotal role and is basically the one responsible for creating Optimus Prime at the repair center, as he was previously known as Orion Pax, a young faithful laborer who was once on the verge of death during the Robot Rebellion. When sensing Orion had a strong spirit, Alpha Trion completely rebuilt Orion, infusing him with the Matrix of Leadership, which was given by the dying Sentinel Prime. Although Alpha Trion was supposed to be the next leader in hopes to bring Cybertron back to peace, instead, he kept it unused, safeguarding it for the right robot to come along, as in the meantime, he decided to secretly create an entire army of robots, otherwise known as Autobots, to fight in the war. With some episodes involving both Autobots and Decepticons heading to Cybertron here and there for certain missions, the cool part is, despite having the planet being completely overthrown and isolated, there are actually a few that still remain in a secret hideout below the surface trying to regain control of their planet, like Alita 1 and her companions. Alita 1 was once known as Ariel, who was also rebuilt by Alpha Trion as a resistance leader as well as being Optimus Prime's love interest. Back on Earth and in present time, the Autobots continue to protect this humble planet by traveling to different locations like New York, Europe, Asia, and Africa, just to name a few, to save civilians from Megatron's grand schemes. And even though they occasionally do visit different countries around the globe or fight within the streets, majority of the time they're placed mostly in the desert canyons away from the city when it comes to battling. Aside from this, the Autobots try to learn about Earth's seasonal changes, engage in some sport activities like football, basketball, and even participate in some racing events for charity. Because of this, the Autobots are given a special recognition by people claiming a celebratory parade called Autobot Day in their honor. Unfortunately, just when you think the season is picking up, it unfortunately decides to drift into the realm of completely unnecessary fillers within the second half, leaving myself to become absolutely bored and wasting my time watching episodes that have nothing to do with anything. There's so many fillers that I can't keep count of, and these are by far some of the worst episodes I've seen, which can easily be skipped at all costs. By the time you get into Season 3, this is where the series takes a huge twist. In the middle of Season 2 and Season 3, there actually takes place a special storyline that a viewer or a fan cannot afford to miss, and that is Transformers the movie. Without spoiling too much, as this will be a separate review on its own, it is now the year 2005 and the ultimate Unicron is shown being the most undestructible villain I've ever seen, and without bullshitting, a good chunk of Autobots and Decepticons end up dying. This introduces us to now a brand new set of characters, so if you happen to get to Season 3 without watching the movie, you'll be in for quite a surprise or extremely lost. So within this new Autobot lineup, continuing on you have Hot Rod, otherwise known as Optimus Prime, the new leader of the Autobots, Ultra Magnus, Arcee, Springer, Cup, Blur, Wheelie, Retgar, Skylynx, and Metroplex. Then there's the other characters like Broadside, Outback, Pipes, Rewind, Sandstorm, Swerve, Steeljaw, Eject, Scamper, Tailgate, Six Gun, Ramhorn, Slammer, Junkyard, Scrap Heat, Nancy, and Beta. Then you have a group of Transformers that combine into a bigger robot like the Technobots consisting of Scattershot, Afterburner, Lightspeed, Nosecone, and Straff, who create the giant Computron. In regards to the human allies, there's a few that appear on and off, but mostly for the main ones we get a new twist, as Spike is now an adult, who married Carly and now has a son named Daniel. Sadly, Spike's father Sparkplug does not appear in any episode, assuming to have passed away. Then there's Marissa Fairborn, who's part of the Earth's Defense Command. As for the Decepticons, we have Galvatron, previously known as Megatron, Cyclonus, previously known as Skywarp, Scourge, previously known as Thundercracker, and Sweeps, previously known as the Insecticons. You also get other characters like Ratbat, Octane, Sixshot, Runabout, Runamuck, Overkill, Slugfest, and Triptychon. Then you have a group of Transformers that combine into a bigger robot like the Predacons, consisting of Dive Bomb, Headstrong, Rampage, Tantrum, and Razorclaw, who combine together to create the Big Predaking. The Terracons, consisting of members Hunger, Rippersnapper, Blot, Sinnertwin, and Cutthroat, who combine together to create the Big Abominus. With the rest of the season continuing immediately after the movie, now being more in space rather than Earth, the Decepticons search desperately for a new leader since certain events of the film led them struggling for some sort of direction. Although Galvatron exists, he tends to be a little more less demanding and threatening than Megatron despite being somewhat of the same character. Galvatron tends to abuse his recruits even more by actually hitting them, insulting them, and literally betraying them left and right as they're now located on the planet called Char. Meanwhile, Optimus Prime struggles to lead the Autobots as certain episodes have him doubting his ability to leave, which eventually causes him to sometimes abandon his matrix of leadership spark, or having his anger getting the best of him, thus causing him to quit on and off. As crazy as this sounds, oftentimes he almost kills himself by defusing his circuits, as it's the only way to converse with the spirit of the Primes in order to gain control of his leadership. And once again, the mysterious events of Cybertron finally unfold as we now learn the true origins of the Cybertronian War. To sum it up the best of my knowledge, Cybertron was once a factory planet under the supervision of the Quintessons, an ancient race known throughout the galaxy whom experimented on creating artificial life like the failed transorganics. However, they eventually created two lines of robots, one side being the consumer goods, where the robots are basically slaves and workers, as the others being the military hardware, where these robots are more on defense with firepower. After being tortured for millennia, the consumer robots created a rebellion by the encouragement of Alpha Trion and his companion Beta. This led to the eviction of the Quintessons, as Cybertron is now a prosperous planet filled with harmony and peace. Unfortunately, this victory was only briefly spent until the military hardware robots ended up wanting conquest and complete control of Cybertron. This led to another dispute causing a drift between the two. The consumer robots were then called the Autobots after they created the art of transforming in order to differentiate themselves from the evil ones. The military hardware, now known as Decepticons, soon followed these footsteps and created their own leader named Megatron. And this leads us back into Season 2 as the events of Optimus Prime's creation was occurring at the same time. So throughout this season, despite Galvatron being the usual cliche of a villain doing his bad guy things while under the possession of Unicron, the Quintessons were mostly more of the main villains who played a pivotal role, as their main goal was to rightfully regain control of Cybertron and retrieve their journal, which contains info on something that may turn everyone in the galaxy against them. And speaking of Unicron, you're able to see his head floating around in space in a few episodes reminding us of his presence that still exists. Now with the story of Cybertron out of the way, since the Autobots' volcanic headquarters had been brutally damaged, the remaining Autobots that thankfully survived ended up creating multiple bases throughout the galaxy, and a brand new headquarters called the New Autobot City with their new computer system called Teletran 2. And as a special backup plan, there's also another city that transforms into an entire robot named Metroplex. But of course, the Decepticons once again follow their footsteps with Trypticon. As the remainder of the season continues, the Autobots are also reunited with other companions from other regions in the galaxy to help this war. We also learn about the Centurion droids, whom are the protectors of the Vector Sigma key, the mega computer that gave all life, as well as the artificial storage asteroid which has all the data on the Autobots in case Cybertron gets destroyed, the Decepticon Memorial Crypt / Autobot Cemetery, and how Primacron built the primitives who deceived a Unicron and Tornadrone. By the time you get towards the end of the season, we do get some pretty cool surprises as Optimus Prime returns from the dead. This shocking appearance, however, is only briefly celebrated, as the story arc proves to answer why he's one of the best leaders of any cartoon that exists. In order to save his allies, Optimus puts himself through the ultimate sacrifice, thus causing him to be totally decimated out of existence with an emotional farewell. But suddenly, in the last 2 episodes, Optimus is seen unscratched and is resurrected by 2 scientists, which neglects his previous send-off, now becoming a prominent character and somewhat putting an end to the war by bringing Cybertron back to its golden age. So with that said, as we get to Season 4, questioning what could possibly happen as it only has 3 episodes, we're randomly shown Galvatron causing havoc with Optimus fearing a bigger threat to rise. Not only do we get plenty of action, but we are introduced to special species called the Nebulans, and then once again introduced to even more new characters. So within the Autobots you have Goldbug, who's now an upgraded version of Bumblebee, Brainstorm, Cerebros, Chase, Chrome Dome, Crosshairs, Freeway, Hardhead, Highbrow, Point Blank, Punch, Rollbar, Searchlight, Sure Shot, Wide Load, Fastlane, and Cloudraker. And last but not least, you have Fortress Maximus. Alongside the newly added members, you also get advanced transforming sequences involving the Nebulans, as they created a way to control the Transformer by sitting inside their head, giving them their own special small, less detailed skilled character, like an ectoskeleton suit, as the group is called the Headmasters. As for the Decepticons, you have Apeface, Mindswipe, Misfire, Skullcruncher, Slugslinger, Snapdragon, Trigger Happy, Weirdwolf, Pound, and Wingspan, and then there's the giant Scorponok, which transforms to one of the biggest robots yet. Unlike the Autobots where they have the Headmasters, the evil Nebulans joined forces with the Decepticons and created their own versions called the Target Masters. Other than that, with the aid of Optimus Prime, the Autobots are led to victory as justice finally prevails. Despite Megatron being somewhat of a threat and someone who can easily manipulate his subordinates, as oftentimes he's extremely annoyed at all of them, but no one is as irritating as one particular character, and that is Starscream. He basically has one of the best story arcs of the show, as he constantly seeks true possession of the Decepticons by desperately wanting to eliminate Megatron. There are so many episodes where he betrays Megatron, and because he doesn't fully think his plans through, it always winds up backfiring on him, leaving him to beg for mercy and forgiveness. But it doesn't even end there. There's one point where Starscream pushes the limits of Megatron's sympathy that, after firing at him out of stupidity, Starscream ends up getting kicked out of the group in complete exile. However, he soon returns when he creates his own team with the Combaticons and faces Megatron in a duel, but we can all guess how that turned out. And to make things even more interesting, after the events of the Transformers movie, Starscream returns in a spirit-like form, haunting the now Galvatron in revenge for what happened to him. This tests Galvatron into extreme measures when he finally puts an end to his madness. Regardless how many times the Autobots and Decepticons fight, there's always a few episodes where they have to work together in order to stop a greater threat, whether it's Optimus and Megatron or the other robots among themselves, but I will say that this show does have its fair share of errors and confusions. For example, the first few episodes, all the Autobots know how to fly until later on only some of them do, disregarding previous scenes. Then, there's one episode where Megatron is defeated and falls into the lava at the end of Season 1, but somehow miraculously returns in Season 2 with no scratch, and acted like nothing happened. Then you have moments when humans like Spike ends up on Cybertron, and I question how he's able to breathe in space. And to finally get a sense of indication of what you're even watching, the show finally inducts the name of the episode, whereas the first season left you wondering. Another thing I enjoyed is the shared universe within the G.I. Joe/Transformers timeline. For example, we get an episode with an October Guard member who's basically like the Russian version of G.I. Joe. Then you have a little spoof of a show called Space Age Jack, where a group of military men fight a lizard race shouting out, "Yo, Jack." And last but not least, Cobra Commander makes a special cameo in an episode going by the name Old Snake. And in case you're in extreme denial, he even yells out the Cobra battle cry at the end. One of the funnier scenarios this show has to offer is a specific club scene where the Decepticons have won the war, the Autobots were forced to leave Earth as the military and humans turned against them, and in order to celebrate, some of the Decepticons were in a club looking hilariously pissed. This show is filled with action, deep storylines, and so many characters that it's hard to choose your favorite. Although a lot of episodes have some horrible fillers, synopsis-style endings, 3 different theme songs, you can't deny the sound effects of both Autobots and Decepticons transforming as mesmerizing and iconic. After watching, now finally understanding the storyline and its purpose, this leaves the desire of wanting more to be questionable, as their purpose on Earth is not necessarily crucial compared to Cybertron, but either way, it's definitely entertaining and something everyone should be familiar with. Therefore, Transformers the Animated Series gets a B+. Thanks for watching, give a like and subscribe for more animated series reviews, and stay tuned for the next episode.